A nuclear power phase-out is the discontinuation of usage of nuclear power for energy production, often initiated because of concerns about nuclear power. Phase-outs usually include shutting down nuclear power plants and looking towards fossil fuels and renewable energy. 3 nuclear accidents have influenced the discontinuation of nuclear power: the 1979 Three Mile Island partial nuclear meltdown in the United States, the 1986 Chernobyl disaster in the USSR, and the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. Sweden was the first country to begin a phase-out, which was repealed in 2009. Sweden was followed by Italy, Belgium, and Germany. Austria and Spain have enacted laws to cease construction on new nuclear power stations. Several other European countries have debated phase-outs. Following the March 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, Germany has permanently shut down 8 of its 17 reactors and pledged to close the rest by the end of 2022. Italy voted overwhelmingly to keep their country non-nuclear. Switzerland and Spain have banned the construction of new reactors. Japan's Prime Minister has called for a dramatic reduction in Japan's reliance on nuclear power. Taiwan's president did the same. Shinzo Abe, the new Prime Minister of Japan since December 2012, announced a plan to restart some of the 54 Japanese nuclear power plants and to continue some NPP sites under construction. As of 2013, countries such as Australia, Austria, Denmark, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Malta, Portugal, Israel, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Norway remain opposed to nuclear power. Germany and Switzerland are phasing out nuclear power. Globally, more nuclear power reactors have closed than opened in recent years. Overview. A popular movement against nuclear power has gained strength in the Western world, based on concerns about more nuclear accidents and concerns about nuclear waste. Anti-nuclear critics see nuclear power as a dangerous, expensive way to boil water to generate electricity. The 1979 Three Mile Island accident and the 1986 Chernobyl disaster played a key role in stopping new plant construction in many countries. Major anti-nuclear power groups include Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, Nuclear Information and Resource Service, and Sortir du Nucléaire. Several countries, especially European countries, have abandoned the construction of nuclear power plants. Austria, Sweden and Italy voted in referendums to oppose or phase out nuclear power, while opposition in Ireland prevented a nuclear program there. Countries that have no nuclear plants and have restricted new plant constructions comprise Australia, Austria, Denmark, Greece, Italy, Ireland and Norway. Poland stopped the construction of a plant. Belgium, Germany, Spain, and Sweden decided not to build new plants or intend to phase out nuclear power, although still mostly relying on nuclear energy. New reactors under construction in Finland and France, which were meant to lead a nuclear new build, have been substantially delayed and are running over budget. However, China has 27 new reactors under construction, and there are also new reactors being built in South Korea, India, and Russia. At least 100 older and smaller reactors will, most probably, be closed over the next 10 to 15 years. Countries that wish to shut down nuclear power plants must find alternatives for electricity generation, otherwise, they are forced to become dependent on imports. Therefore, the discussion of a future for nuclear energy is intertwined with the discussion of an energy transition to renewable energy. Countries that have decided on a phase-out. Austria. A nuclear power station was built during the 1970s at Zwettendorf, Austria, but its startup was prevented by a popular vote in 1978. On July 9, 1997, the Austrian parliament voted unanimously to maintain the country's anti-nuclear policy. Belgium's nuclear phase-out legislation was agreed in July 1999 by the Liberals, the Socialists and the Greens Party. The phase-out law calls for each of Belgium's 7 reactors to close after 40 years of operation with no new reactors built subsequently. When the law was being passed, it was speculated it would be overturned again as soon as an administration without the Greens was in power. In 2003, a new government was elected without the Greens. In September 2005, the government decided to partially overturn the previous decision, extending the phase-out period for another 20 years, with possible further extensions. It remains unknown if additional nuclear plants will be built. In July 2005, the Federal Planning Bureau published a new report, which states that oil and other fossil fuels generate 90% of Belgian energy use, while nuclear power accounts for 9% and renewable energy for 1%. Electricity only amounts to 16% of total energy use, and while nuclear-powered electricity amounts to 9% of use in Belgium, in many parts of Belgium, especially in Flanders, it makes up more than 50% of the electricity provided to households and businesses. This was one of the major reasons to revert the earlier phase-out, since it was impossible to provide more than 50% of the electricity by alternative energy production, and a revert to the classical coal-driven electricity would mean inability to adhere to the Kyoto Protocol. It is projected that within 25 years renewable energy will increase to at most 5% of the energy use because of high costs. The current plan of the government is for all nuclear power stations to shut down by 2025. The report raises concerns about greenhouse gases and sustainability. In August 2005, French Suez offered to buy the Belgian Electrabel, which runs nuclear power stations. At the end of 2005, Suez had some 98.5% of all Electrabel shares. Beginning 2006, Suez and Gaz de France announced a merger. In the 2010-2011 Belgian government formation negotiations, the phase-out was emphasized again, with concrete plans to shut off 3 of the country's 7 reactors by 2015. Germany. In 2000, the German government, consisting of the SPD and Alliance 90, the Greens, officially announced its intention to phase out the use of nuclear energy. The power plants in Stade and Oberigheim were turned off on November 14, 2003, and May 11, 2005, respectively. The plant's dismantling was scheduled to begin in 2007. A Renewable Energy Sources Act provided for a tax in support of renewable energy. The German government, declaring climate protection as a key policy issue, announced a carbon dioxide reduction target by the year 2005 compared to 1990 by 25%. In 1998, the use of renewables in Germany reached 284 petajoules of primary energy demand, which corresponds to 5% of the total electricity demand. By 2010, the German government wanted to reach 10%. Also, it has been pointed out, there were, as yet, no plans for the final storage of nuclear waste. By tightening safety regulations and increasing taxation, a faster end to nuclear power could have been forced. A gradual closing down of nuclear power plants had come along with concessions in questions of safety for the population with transport of nuclear waste throughout Germany. This latter point has been disagreed with by the Minister of Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. Critics of a phase-out in Germany argue that the power output from the nuclear power stations will not be adequately compensated and predict an energy crisis. They also argue that only coal-powered plants could compensate for nuclear power and CO2 emissions will increase tremendously. Energy may have to be imported from France's nuclear power facilities or Russian natural gas. Despite Russia's not being perceived as a safe partner in much of Western Europe. In 2011, Deutsche Bank analysts concluded that the global impact of the Fukushima accident is a fundamental shift in public perception with regard to how a nation prioritizes and values its population's health, safety, security, and natural environment when determining its current and future energy pathways. Following the March 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, Germany has permanently shut down 8 of its 17 reactors. Between 2011 and 2014, Germany burned more coal, an additional 9.5 million tons of oil equivalent. Galvanized by the Fukushima nuclear disaster, first anniversary anti-nuclear demonstrations were held in Germany in March 2012. Organizers say more than 50,000 people in 6 regions took part. Germany's Energiewende, or energy transition, designates a significant change in energy policy from 2011. The term encompasses a reorientation of policy from demand to supply and a shift from centralized to distributed generation, which should replace overproduction and avoidable energy consumption with energy-saving measures and increased efficiency. In September 2011, German engineering giant Siemens announced it will withdraw entirely from the nuclear industry as a response to the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan, and said that it would no longer build nuclear power plants anywhere in the world. The company's chairman, Peter Loscher, said that Siemens was ending plans to cooperate with Rosatom, the Russian state-controlled nuclear power company, in the construction of dozens of nuclear plants throughout Russia over the coming 2 decades. Also in September 2011, IAEA Director General Yukio Amano said the Japanese nuclear disaster caused deep public anxiety throughout the world and damaged confidence in nuclear power. Italy nuclear power phase-out commenced in Italy in 1987, 1 year after the Chernobyl accident. Following a referendum in that year, Italy's 4 nuclear power plants were closed down, the last in 1990. A moratorium on the construction of new plants, originally in effect from 1987 until 1993, has since been extended indefinitely. In recent years, Italy has been an importer of nuclear-generated electricity, and its largest electricity utility Enel S.p.A. has been investing in reactors in both France and Slovakia to provide this electricity in the future, and also in the development of the EPR technology. In October 2005, there was a seminar sponsored by the government about the possibility of reviving Italian nuclear power. The Fourth Cabinet led by Silvio Berlusconi tried to implement a new nuclear plan, but a referendum held in June 2011 stopped any project. Philippines. In the Philippines, in 2004, President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo outlined her energy policy. She wants to increase indigenous oil and gas reserves through exploration, develop alternative energy resources, and force the development of natural gas as a fuel and cocoa diesel as alternative fuel, and build partnerships with Saudi Arabia, Asian countries, China and Russia. She also made public plans to convert the Bataan nuclear power plant into a gas-powered facility. Sweden. After the 3 Mile Island accident in 1979, there was a referendum in Sweden about the future of nuclear power there. As a result of this, the Swedish parliament decided in 1980 that no further nuclear power plants should be built, and that a nuclear power phase-out should be completed by 2010. Some observers have condemned the referendum as flawed because people could only vote no to nuclear, although 3 options were basically a harder or a softer no. After the 1986 Chernobyl accident in Ukraine, the question of security of nuclear energy was again raised. In 1997, the Riksdag, the Swedish parliament, decided to shut down one of the reactors at Barsebäck by July 1, 1998, and the second before July 1, 2001, although under the condition that their energy production would be compensated. The next Conservative government tried to cancel the phase-out, but, after protests, did not cancel it but instead decided to extend the time limit to 2010. At Barsbach, Block 1 was shut down on November 30, 1999 and Block 2 on June 1, 2005. The nuclear energy phase-out is controversial in Sweden. It is feared that Sweden will lose its international competitiveness. The energy production of the remaining nuclear power plants has been considerably increased in recent years to compensate for the turn-off of Barsbach. In 1998, the government decided to build no further hydropower plants in order to protect national water resources. In spite of extensive efforts to create alternatives to nuclear power, such as fossil fuels, it is not likely that Sweden can complete the nuclear power phase-out by 2010. It has been estimated that nuclear power plants in operation will stay in operation until 2050. In March 2005, an opinion poll of 1027 people showed 83% support for maintaining or increasing nuclear power. Another poll in May of residents that lived around Barsbach found that 94% wanted it to stay. In June 2005, radioactive water was detected leaking from the nuclear waste store in Forsmark, Sweden. The content of radioactive cesium in the water sampled was 10 times the normal value. Radioactive leakage at Swedish nuclear waste store. This, however, has not led to a major change in public opinion. In 2006, the Centre Party of Sweden, an opposition party that supported the phase-out, announced that it is dropping its opposition to nuclear power, at least for now, claiming that it is unrealistic to expect the phase-out in the short term. It said it will now support the opposition, which is considerably more pro-nuclear than the government. In August 2006, 3 of Sweden's 10 nuclear reactors were shut down due to safety concerns following an incident at Forsmark nuclear power plant, in which 2 out of 4 emergency power generators failed, causing power shortage. Cooling systems, however, worked and shutdown was successful without incident. Another reactor in Forsmark and a 5th at Ringhals nuclear power plant have been offline due to planned maintenance work. With 5 of its 10 reactors down, Sweden's power generation capacity is down by almost a fifth. Swedish nuclear reactors shut down over safety concerns. Sweden's largest power plant with 4 reactors, Ringhals, located about 60 kilometers south of Gothenburg, delivers approximately 24 terawatt-hours a year, the equivalent of 21% of Swedish electricity consumption. In 2010, Parliament halted the phase-out policy, allowing for new reactors to replace existing ones. Switzerland as of 2013. Update. The 5 operational Swiss nuclear reactors were Besnor 1 and 2, Gosgen, Liebstadt, and Mühleberg, all located in the German-speaking part of the country. Nuclear power accounted for 36.4% of the national electricity generation, while 57.9% came from hydroelectricity. The remaining 5.7% was generated by other conventional and non-hydro renewable power stations. On 25 May 2011, the Federal Council decided on a slow phase-out by not extending running times or building new power plants. The first power plant, Mühleberg, will stop running in 2019, the last in 2034. There have been many Swiss referenda on the topic of nuclear energy, beginning in 1979 with the Citizens' Initiative for Nuclear Safety, which was rejected. In 1984, there was a vote on an initiative for a future without further nuclear power stations, with the result being a 55 to 45% vote against. On September 23, 1990, Switzerland had 2 more referenda about nuclear power. The initiative, Stop the Construction of Nuclear Power Stations, which proposed a 10-year moratorium on the construction of new nuclear power plants, was passed with 54.5% to 45.5%. The initiative for a phase-out was rejected with by 53% to 47.1%. In 2000, there was a vote on a green tax for support of solar energy. It was rejected by 67 to 31%. On May 18, 2003, there were two referenda: electricity without nuclear, asking for a decision on a nuclear power phase-out, and moratorium plus, for an extension of the earlier decided moratorium on the construction of new nuclear power plants. Both were turned down. The results were: moratorium plus, 41.6% yes, 58.4% no; electricity without nuclear, 33.7% yes, 66.3% no. The program of the Electricity Without Nuclear petition was to shut down all nuclear power stations by 2033, starting with Unit 1 and 2 of Besnor nuclear power stations, Mühleberg in 2005, Gosjin in 2009, and Liebstadt in 2014. Moratorium Plus was for an extension of the moratorium for another 10 years. And additionally a condition to stop the present reactors after 40 years of operation. In order to extend the 40 years by 10 more years, another referendum would have to be held. The rejection of the moratorium plus had come as a surprise to many, as opinion polls before the referendum had showed acceptance. Reasons for the rejections in both cases were seen as the worsened economic situation,